Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of 5 Star Pod Splash. For those of you new to the channel, make sure you guys go like, follow, subscribe to the whole effing show on Twitch and on Facebook. You see it right there, right there. Yep. Make sure y'all go follow that. And also make sure you guys go follow, like, subscribe Top Shelf TV on YouTube. And for the podcast listeners that are listening via audio, make sure y'all go check out 5 Star Pod Splash over at Spotify and Anchor if you guys want to check it out, the audio version. Today is a special edition of 5 Star Pod Splash. What makes it special is I will be going over more than just one topic today. Normally I keep it just one topic, but today I actually got a few topics I'll be going over. Initially, I was just going to do a throwback for WCW Wrestle War 1991. I had a review for that I was about to break down. But then a viewer for the 5 Star Pod Splash channel sent me a message requesting for me to review WWF Monday Night Raw May 17th from 1993. So I actually went and I checked that out as well, and I did a review for that as well. And then there was one other thing I want to break down, and that was kind of some things that I'm noticing that comic books, anime, and professional wrestling all have in common and are actually like dealing with in one way or another. So it's kind of like a battle that they're all faced with right now. A couple similarities between all three of the different genres: anime, comic books, and pro wrestling. I will to also speak on for a minute. I want to also talk on toxic fans, mainly pertaining to anime, but when I do break down those toxic fans, a couple of those different type of toxic fans, there's a lot of different variations of toxic fans and different types of toxic fans. I've seen a lot of people throwing around the word a lot. A lot of people like to use the word toxic on social media, but I don't think people really got a clear understanding for it or really realize how many different variations of toxic fans there are. Are you a toxic fan? Possibly. I'm pretty sure everybody's a toxic fan in some way, shape, or form, but that's what we'll be going over. So first, WCW, second, WWF Raw, three, the similarities between comic books, anime, pro wrestling / toxic fans. And before I get into all three of those things, one thing that made me stop my live stream earlier, I was going to do this a few hours earlier when I got this terrible, heartbreaking news that John Hubbard, excuse me if I said that wrong, Brody Lee, aka Luke Harper, passed away not that long ago. So my deepest condolences to his family, his wife, his kids, close friends, and everybody. Definitely a huge loss. Moment of silence, then I'll say a few words for Luke Harper, Brody Lee. Just give me 10 seconds real quick. Moment of silence, everybody. All right. Salute to the people tuning in right now. So before I get started with the WCW, the WWF review, I just want to say a few things about Luke Harper. So when I think Luke Harper, and now, you sometimes you don't appreciate what you have until it's gone, or sometimes you might overlook people's greatness to a certain extent. And what I mean by that is, like, myself personally, I always say a lot of times, like, man, the Shield is one of my favorite factions, because I give them a lot of credit, but really there was also the Wyatt family. You had the Shield and you had the Wyatt family running neck and neck during that time where I consider both those stables very legendary and right up there with some of the greatest stables of all time. Even though they're a younger faction and younger wrestlers or whatnot, the reason I say that is because for so long it's kind of been like a time honored tradition where like the veteran wrestlers and like the older wrestlers or whatnot, they for the most part kind of safeguard like the main positions, like the higher up on the card, you know, like the main event position and the main event slots and like the main storylines or whatnot. And that was one thing that you didn't really see a lot of younger talent just straight out the gate, like are established and being protected. Like usually they got to pay a lot of dues or whatnot, but when the Shield came in, they went straight to the top. And at the same time that they were rising to the top, the Wyatt family was doing the same. And I think sometimes it might get overlooked because of how, you know, clearly Roman Reigns was that guy that they really wanted to make the number one face, like the next John Cena, you know. And then you had all the success that's come Jon Moxley's way and Dean Ambrose's way, and then the same thing with Seth Rollins. But Bray Wyatt, Luke Harper, Eric Rowan, they definitely did the thing with the Wyatt family. They definitely did pretty much the same exact thing. They weren't regulated to mid-carder or a jobber or whatnot. They were straight out the gate a big deal. So like they made a huge impact, a everlasting impact on the game out the gate with that. When I think of Luke Harper in particular, I think back to like I liked his work with Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley, both in AEW and in WWE. They had great chemistry. I remember him powerbombing Jon Moxley through the table, or not through the table, but out of the ring through the ladder. Man, like Luke Harper, he is just gone too soon, so he will definitely be missed. Very young. I'm 36. He was only 5 years older than me. He's younger than my oldest sister. Like, so it just shows, like, in my case, like, man, he's just gone way too early. Very tragic, very sad. He definitely, like, he was one of those people, like, everybody knew he had just a ton of potential and that sky was the limit, and we're just hoping for him to get his big break in WWE. And then once he got tired and fed up with the creative over there, he went to AEW and he totally revamped his career. And he honestly became the best part of the Being the Elite show, him and the Dark Order. Like he took something that was like, there was so much hate and heat on the Dark Order. And I feel like when he came into the Dark Order, it kind of in a way saved their career. And when I say saved their career, like when there was last Christmas, ironically enough, it was last Christmas, the very last AEW of the year, if you guys recall, and they've only been out for a little bit over a year now, but it was the Dark Order standing tall, the last AEW of the year. And I believe this is right before Brody Lee joined, if I'm not mistaken. But right after that, they like stopped being on TV or whatnot. And this is before the pandemic, so it wasn't because they're stuck on the pandemic or whatnot. But there was because I believe he came during the pandemic. So all of a sudden they went from ending the show on the very last show of the year to kind of being like an afterthought or whatnot. And then Brody Lee came back and joined the Dark Order, and it really like boosted their popularity and made them be taken serious again, and more than just a comedy act, even though they incorporate a lot of comedy. One of my favorite Brody Lee Being the Elite segments, I liked his segments on AEW as well, with the Mr. McMahon when he's just eating and they have to watch him eat, and all different type of little things he was doing on there. But there was the one in particular, it might have been his very last appearance on AEW, but when Trent's mom was on there, and you could tell he was just enjoying himself, and he was like trying not to break character with Trent's mom. It was the most hilarious thing, man. But just like one of the very like well-rounded big men, like he could do it all. He was a hard hitter, like a bruiser Brody, but then at the same time, you know, he could do the high flying stuff. He was just so all around good. I really think in some sense, I feel he was the best member of the Wyatt family in ring per se. Like Obviously, Bray Wyatt, like king of promos, but when it came to like the in-ring aspect, I enjoyed watching his matches more than anyone else on the Wyatt family and a lot of people on the roster in general. So rest in peace to John, rest in peace to Luke Harper, Brody Lee. You will greatly be missed. AEW, just for weeks, we've been watching the BTE, just like, man, I can't wait for him to come back. And it's just heartbreaking knowing that he won't be back up on there. The show's not going to be the same without them or without him. So there's that. On to a lighter note, let's go ahead and break down a few things. This is my very last day, or maybe not my last day in this house that I'm in right now, but it's like my last week or so. I'm definitely moving all my computer stuff over to my new location, or my new house or whatnot, tomorrow. So that's why I'm knocking a bunch out today, because I don't know when I'm going to be able to actually do another one of these. And just from the time I've been doing at this house, I have so much history doing stuff from this house that I just want to do one long one for the road, So first off, I just want to do, normally I'd be doing AEW and WWE and whatnot, like the active or current wrestling that's on television. But I figured from time to time I do some throwbacks, like I did the very first SummerSlam. I believe I did the SummerSlam after the first SummerSlam, so the first two SummerSlams, a couple other old schools, and I'm going to continue to do that. I also got the top 10 show. Look out for that. We'll be dropping soon top 10 Sega games, and then top 10 Super Nintendo games, and also we got the top 10 Christmas special coming out as well soon. Make sure you go vote on those polls. So if you want to know where you could go to put in your top 10 favorite video games, go to the Facebook group Game Haven, or you could go to Top Shelf TV, and that's where you could go to vote on, mainly Game Haven. That's where the polls are listed in the announcement section. So make sure to go up in there to vote on your favorite Christmas movies, video games. And after the polls reach a certain time frame or whatnot, I go up in there and then I'll break down the reviews along with my personal top 10. So make sure y'all make your voices heard on that right there. With that being said, we are going to get into the first review for the day. I said there's more than one. One other thing before I get into these reviews, for the people that are able to watch the video, because this is both on video and live stream, for my video gamers out there in Rare Form Gaming, in Game Haven, and for my gamers that aren't in Rare Form Gaming, who are not in Game Haven, I suggest you go and join those groups, two of the best video game groups. It's like a coalition. Shout out to my brother Rashad Cherry and Stan as well, over both the creators of those groups. Gotta give them their props. But one thing I just want to say real quick, man, for my gamers, before I get into my wrestling review, my anime, comic book, and everything, for my gamers in Game Haven, in Rare Form Gaming, we got to start getting a little bit more active with the gaming and communication and whatnot. I know there's a lot of gamers in there. That Sephiroth just came out. Sephiroth just came out on Nintendo Smash, so I know a lot of y'all downloaded that. So quit running the fade. I am issuing a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Holiday Challenge. Whenever y'all ready, there goes the friend code. Y'all go ahead, pause the video, copy down the friend code, add me on the Super Nintendo, not the Super Nintendo, on the Wii U. We can get down on some Super Smash Bros. At a later time. I'm gonna probably be on there sometime later tomorrow. But yeah, quit running from the fade, quit ducking the smoke. Come see me on Super Smash Bros. There goes the friend code SW. For my podcast people who cannot see the video, make sure y'all go to SW-72109255-3921, and we can get down on some Super Smash. I don't even play with Sephiroth. I download them. I don't even play with them. I haven't played in so long that I didn't have none of the original or any of the DLC, but I ended up downloading him and Terry Bogard. Anybody else I did not download, but I'll end up probably eventually downloading the Joker dude, and maybe even the the Minecraft dude at a later time. But right now, it is what it is. See me up on there. I'll probably be on there sometime tomorrow. So with that being said, we got 2 throwback reviews today. The first one, WCW Wrestle War from 1991. Man, how old were you in 1991? I'm a little bit old, so I was 7 years old, 1991. I wasn't really big on WCW at that time. I was a big WWE head, WWF at the time. So going back to thanks to the WWE network, I was able to. They got so many gems on there, and I really want to go back at some point in time because like my whole life has been intertwined with pro wrestling. My first memories is pro wrestling, and I've just always been in love with pro wrestling my entire life. But I watched WCW from time to time, but it was always WWF for me. And then I had my ECW phase. I rock with WCW, just not as strongly. So I wasn't a historian on WCW. So this was my first time seeing Wrestle War 1991. Very first thing on the Wrestle War. Before I even get to the match, you have Tony Schiavone breaking down the card for the night. And then you have Jim Ross and Dusty Rhodes on commentary. So this is before Jim Ross got to WWF. Man, what a commentary team, might I just say real quick, man. You got the legendary Dusty Rhodes, and you got Jim Ross, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, color commentator of all time. So first match on this card for Wrestle War 1991. It was a 6-man tag team championship match. It's featuring State Patrol and the Big Cat versus the Junkyard Dog with Tommy Rich and Ricky Morton. Tommy Rich and Ricky Morton. Now, again, I was not super familiar on WCW, but there was something about the name Ricky Morton, and it's because I watch those Jim Cornette, the Cold Cornette sometimes, just to get like a different perspective. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says or whatnot, but sometimes it's refreshing to get a different perspective. Some you got to be able to decipher, the good from the bad. But I've heard that name Ricky Morton, so it was kind of a little eye-opening for me myself to get to watch this matchup right here. Some of the things I took away from this matchup. State Patrol looks like the Mountie and the Big Boss Man did a fusion dance together. And they're the little tag team. The Big Cat, he looks like he could have been Ernest the Cat Miller's older brother. Just like a big black Ernest the Cat Miller. So the Junkyard Dog and Big Cat, they start the match. And JR does a great job, especially back in, this is JR, young JR. He does a great job on the commentary, really of playing up the athletic accolades of both the Big Cat and the Junkyard Dog. If you're looking at both of these wrestlers in the ring and their characters and their gear and everything, you probably wouldn't even know, even though they're both incredibly huge for their men, but you probably wouldn't even know that they were college football players. So kudos to Jim Ross, breaking out their athletic and college degree, not degree, but their accolades or whatnot. Ricky Morton and the Lieutenant James Earl, excuse me, they were both in there right after the Junkyard Dog, Big Cat, and from what I recall with this one, Ricky Morton and Tommy Rich. Tommy Rich is the more technical, ground-based wrestler from what I'm able to put together. I'm not too familiar with these guys, but watching this back, Tommy Rich was more of the technical ground guy, the old school. And then Ricky Morton kind of was not even kind of, he was like the flashy guy in the group. The fans were really into Ricky Morton. I'll say that. A lot of charisma with Ricky Morton, maybe even more than the Junkyard Dog, who's a person who's highly known for his charisma as well. Let's see here. Another thing I had taken away from this was that the fans were really pumped when the Junkyard Dog and the Big Cat were in the ring. I mean, at this time too, this is 1991, wasn't a whole wasn't nowhere near as many African American pro wrestlers, and definitely probably a lot more racial tension during that time and whatnot. But the fans are really supportive and really behind Junkyard Dog during a time where, you know, racism was still like super high. Not to say there ain't racism now, but they were really rocking with the Junkyard Dog up in that matchup. Junkyard Dog, his finishing move, they won the match with Junkyard hitting the thump, which is basically like the Bulldogs running power slam. Didn't even really run far. He probably took like a step or two, jumped up a little and power slammed, and like just little, put a little extra little spice on a power slam. Really nothing special. However, once he hit the finisher, Ricky Morton would be the one to get the pin, which is something I kind of was like, damn, can't let the black man get the pin, you know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. It was all good, you know. They still picked up the win. It was a black person on each team, so a brother had to win either way, you know. But you know, it wasn't nothing too crazy that first match, but I did like the contrast in styles. Yeah, two big men on, yeah, one big man on each style. Yeah, one ground technician on each team, and then you had one like high flyer, like flashy type of person on each. So it was a well balanced balance. One thing though that I did kind of realize though was like, I kind of feel like the power guy took on the power guy, the technical guy took on the technical guy, and the high flyer or fast wrestler took on the vice versa. Where usually I kind of like it when it's like different styles because I don't know, it just feels better for some reason sometimes, in my opinion. Other times not so, you know. But it was a decent match, nothing crazy, but it was a decent match. After that, Tony Schiavone interviews Terry Taylor, a person I also heard something about, I believe maybe on Conan and Disco Inferno's podcast, talking about Terry Taylor and how he's like one of those like backhanded people, you know, like tell him something then he goes and tells somebody else type cats, you know. Not really fond of people like that. But Tony Schiavone is doing an interview with Terry Taylor, who has a little blonde hair valet with him, and they're basically they got like the Wall Street gimmick going on, calling themselves the York Foundation, and they're basically promoting their match later on in the night with the wrestler by the name of Z-Man. Again, I wasn't too familiar with WCW back in the day like that. I'm also familiar with like the OGs, the Road Warriors, Sting, Ric Flair, etc. But like I didn't know every wrestler, and these were definitely people I was not too aware of or too fond of, and wasn't really high expectations or anything. But I didn't skip not one match. Gave everybody their due. Second match on the card was between Brad Armstrong and beautiful Bobby Eaton. Pause for the dark side. And so yeah, this matchup right here. Brad Armstrong, the first thing I noticed, like out the gate watching this match, it was kind of funny to me because it's like Brad Armstrong. If you've never seen Brad Armstrong, WCW, go and watch this match, WCW Wrestle War 1991, and tell me Brad Armstrong does not look like Kenny Omega. I think I've seen recently on social media someone like post a picture or two of Brad Armstrong looking even more like Kenny Omega than he actually looks in this match. But even in this match, he looks like Kenny Omega jumped in a time machine and went back to 1991 to wrestle in WCW. This dude looks exactly like Kenny Omega, like the same exact hair, build, damn near everything except for his wrestling style. But outside of that, it looks like Kenny Omega back in 1991, like with the old school wrestling foundation and fundamentals. After that, let's see here. Brad Armstrong, or not Brad, Bobby is rocking the mullet. There was a couple people on the show that was rocking the mullet, which was really a nice indicator of the 90s, because, man, there was a lot of wrestlers back in the early 90s, mid-90s rocking that mullet. The GOAT being Eddie Guerrero, obviously, but, yeah, Bobby was rocking a wicked mullet. Let's see here. Beautiful Bobby, man. There was one part of the match, there was some, like, even while some of the stuff, like, it might not have been as fast-paced or high-flying, high-risk as we're used to today, obviously, with it being damn near 30 years ago that this is taking place, 29 years ago that this is taking place. Well, shit, we're about to be in 2021, so really 30 years since this has been taking place. And One thing I will say though is beautiful Bobby Eaton could throw one mean ass right. Like he threw some of the best punches I've seen in professional wrestling. Like that right punch that he threw, it was just so it looked so real. And you know what? The way that they sold it, it just was perfect selling. It, like less is more. You hear the phrase less is more. Like it really is if the people know how to sell it right. You know what I'm saying? Like if you would have thought that punch looked so perfect that if the person didn't sell it right, it would have looked weird them not selling it because it looked like it would knock you on your ass. Like it was just a really well placed punch. One thing while I was watching this, after watching that other match, I said to myself, I was like, man, I really want to see, and I'm pretty sure for the wrestling historians, the older ones than myself, who could go back, because like my memory of wrestling really starts to form around 87, maybe even 86 to a certain extent, but 87, 88 is when I like my memory really was like starting to like I could recall everything like picture perfect type, you know, but one thing I did say, and for the older school audience that is tuning in or will be listening back later, if you have any recommendations on a good, beautiful Bobby Eaton versus Ricky Morton one-on-one or a tag team match, let me know, because after watching that first match, the charisma that Ricky Morton had, and then watching beautiful Bobby Eaton, like, damn, like I want to see a match between those two. Like, there's something, but just watching those two matches, like I just could tell they'd have amazing chemistry in the ring together. Beautiful Bobby Eaton wins with a top rope leg drop. A top rope leg drop, man, that was one of my favorite moves because I'm a huge ECW fan, RVD and Sabu. And when Sabu used to do the Arabian Facebuster and all the different variations of the leg drop, like I was always a huge fan of the leg drop. Especially the top rope leg drop and the Booker T Houston hangover leg drop. There's so many different variations, but I love all the leg drops pretty much. I mean, I started off a Hulkamaniac fan, so like even the basic ass Hulk Hogan leg drop is good in my book, man. I love when people win with that move. Match number 3, Miss A and Miki Honda versus Itsuki Yamasaki and Mami Kitamura. All right, like one thing I have to say is like I know it's 1991, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of leadway, but damn, I really hated the super stereotypical Asian theme song music that they gave Miss A and Mickey Honda. It was like super duper generic creator wrestler stereotype Asian music right there. One thing I will say though, and damn, like what happened in Japan with your women wrestling, because this match, for it to be in 1991, like we credit so much, and rightfully so, NXT and the women from NXT, the Four Horsewomen, and you know Paige and Emma and a couple other handful of females, even outside of it, like Gail Kim and Victoria, Lita, Trish Stratus, whatnot. But especially during this NXT, these past couple years, we really championed the phrase like women's revolution or whatnot. But go back and watch this match from 1991. These women were doing damn near everything they're doing today. Like they were so ahead of their time, is all I could say. And it was from the Japanese women and from the Japanese imports that they brought over. I don't know if they were from New Japan at this time or if they were from a different women's organization over there. But for as advanced as they were, it's kind of just like, dang, Japanese should have been at the forefront of this women's revolution. And I know you have your Io Shirai's, your Asukas and everything, and just doesn't get the same mainstream attention or whatnot. But like for as advanced as this match was, for how good as this match was from these women, it just surprised me that the revolution didn't happen sooner in a sense. Honda had some really good kicks to her opponent in the corner. Man, this was just a really good women's matchup. These women were killing it. JR mentioned how the women wrestling in Japan was way different than the women wrestling in America culture during that time, which it would be an understatement. because at this time we weren't seeing women wrestle like this in America. I mean, even when you break out your fabulous mullahs and, you know what I'm saying, and your Mae Youngs and everything, like these Japanese women were like getting busy, bro. Like you really got to go and check out this match. Itsuki and Mami, they would end up winning with a scissors roll into a small package. Like it was a really technically sound, good matchup, and you could almost make the argument out of the first three matches, it was the best match. So kudos to the ladies for that matchup. Match number 4 on the card was between the Nature Boy Buddy Landel and Dustin Rhodes. Now, before we get to this match, there was a little segment that happens where Tony Schiavone is interviewing Missy Hyatt, and she's talking about women inequality, which kind of is a perfect segue from the last match to go into that, because the women in that match just really killed it, showed that they could do what the men do and put on a show, and you know that they're more than just eye candy or whatnot, and that they could be talent and treated as athletes and whatnot. And we followed that matchup at the perfect time with Missy Hyatt speaking with Tony Schiavone, talking about how women are being treated unequal in professional wrestling and how she's intends to change all that, and she wants to be the first woman to go backstage to interview the male wrestlers, since at this time there was not really no female wrestlers from America per se on the roster, really, or at least on the card. So pretty much we cut to match number 4, Nature Boy Landel versus Dustin Rhodes. Now, this is how great Ric Flair is. You know you are great when you work at a company and they have parodies of you in the same company you're working for. Like, you remember when Diesel and Razor Ramon went to WCW as Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, and so WWE had to make a fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon, like, to parody him, and they did the same thing with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, and then they did the same thing with Goldberg. WWE was really cutthroat in their bag at the time. When you really think about it, they were shitting on WCW hard. But it's another thing when you have the real Nature Boy Ric Flair on your roster, on your show, and you still have a wannabe on the same show calling themselves the Nature Boy. There's only one Nature Boy, Ric Flair. I know there's Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, but look, aside from him, we got Ric Flair. That's it. Man, you have this Nature Boy Buddy Landel. I couldn't take this match too seriously. I would have skipped if it wasn't for Dustin Rhodes. I ain't even gonna lie, because that just really was kind of off-putting to me in a sense. It's just like, damn, what a mark that, like, you could be anything in the world. You're in the world of professional wrestling, and you want to be another man, a man that's at the same company. Like, damn, have some dignity, have some respect for yourself, you know. So it really happened. Just like I wrote down, actually, I'm looking at my notes, and I just put down, Buddy Landel, you got a fake Ric Flair while you have the real Ric Flair on the show. Why? And that's exactly how I still feel about that. It was dope seeing Dusty Rhodes on commentary. I mean, it's just dope seeing Dusty Rhodes in general. You know, rest in peace to Dusty Rhodes as well. Great legend. But it was especially dope seeing Dusty Rhodes get to call commentary on his son Dustin's matchup. Like, you could tell how proud he was of his son, and did just like, you could tell the energy from him picked up. This is when Dusty started to come alive on the commentary. The first couple matches, like, you know, he did his thing, but when I was looking, even when I look at my notes back, it was really JR carrying the first couple matches. But once this match came up, Dusty got up into it. You know, Dusty came alive for this matchup. Dustin Rhodes, man, how amazing. Like I said, like, we are just a couple days away from this card being in 30 years, you know, 30 years old, this card practically. And Dustin Rhodes is still wrestling, you know? So, like, that's a testament to him. He's been wrestling longer than a lot of people have been alive. I was 7 years old when this guy was wrestling. This guy's been making that good money. Let me just say that, man. So, yeah, I mean, I was talking about how Chris Jericho, I'm pretty sure Dustin had a longer career than Chris Jericho. We just got done celebrating Jericho's, I don't know, 25 or 30 year anniversary But we haven't celebrated Dustin's 30-year. I definitely believe they need to do something for him in that regard, because he's been there even longer than Chris Jericho. He might not have some of the same accolades, but really that's on the bookers. Definitely a legend in the game. Match was really playing out like two younger stars playing the role of Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes in a sense. Now that I come to think about it, obviously with the Nature Boy Buddy Landel as the wannabe Ric Flair, and then Dustin Rhodes, not even as a wannabe Dusty Rhodes, because that is his legitimate son. He is the heir to the Rhodes family. He was the person who was the torch was passed to, and he was basically continuing that time-honored tradition, second generation superstar or whatnot. But that's kind of how the match played out. Landel clearly idolizes Ric Flair, wrestled as best as he could his Ric Flair impersonation. Respect the originator, not the imitator, you know what I'm saying? But that's exactly how this match, it felt like a younger, it felt almost like as if like someone was doing a Ric Flair or Dusty Rhodes movie, and these were the people casted to play Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. That's how it felt, except for they got like a terrible actor for Ric Flair and got a good actor for Dusty Rhodes. It's no knock to Buddy Landel. I just didn't feel that, like, you're not his son or nothing like that. Like when you see Dustin doing the elbow and the Dusty Rhodes traits, it makes sense, and it's even you know, not even just appreciated, but it's straight. You could do that because you're his son or whatnot. But when you're another man and you're like dressing like this other man and naming yourself after this other man and all this stuff, it's just too Stanish, too Markish, you know. So there is what it is with that. All right, so after that, where are you? I already mentioned that, you know. So I mentioned right before that match how Missy Hyatt said that she was going to go and be the first woman to do a backstage interview. So after that match was over, then we actually cut to her backstage going into the men's locker room. And as soon as she goes back into the locker room, she gets immediately ran out by Stan Hansen, who, the person I heard a lot of different things about, wasn't really too familiar with him. Outside of like word of mouth or whatnot, didn't really grow up watching a bunch of his matches or whatnot. But I've seen a couple of his matches. I also saw WCW Fall Brawl right after this. I didn't end up reviewing that, but I ended up watching a match between him and Vader that ended in a double count. It was really good. Or actually, maybe that's on this card. Let me let me chill for a second. It might be on this card. So yeah, Stan Hansen, he basically runs Missy Hyatt out of the backstage before she could get her backstage interview, be the first woman to get a backstage interview. But I did like the quote from Stan Hansen, you know, get your big butt up out of here. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know if that'll fly. People are so politically correct and sensitive nowadays. They might have had some type of issue with him having mention of her big booty, you know. But match number 5 on the card was the Royal Family versus the Young Pistols and Tracy Smothers, another person, rest in peace, Tracy Smothers. I'll be real with you, I was never really the biggest Tracy Smothers fan. Don't knock me. You know, from what I was familiar with Tracy Smothers from his time in ECW, and that's why, you know, he's always running around with the full-blooded Italians. He had that one dude, and then we always had the like the little, you know, he always had the little Confederate flag and all that bullshit, so I wasn't really feeling with it, you know what I'm saying? I remember one time I was talking to Devon, I was like, shine my shoes, boy. And you know what, like, it wasn't Tracy who said it, but I mean, you roll with the person, it was your tag partner, so if he comfortable saying that racist stuff around you, man, I kind of have that rule, you know what I'm saying? But in any case, this match, I didn't really have too much on this, so I wasn't really too big on this matchup. The Royal Family was like the power heel team, and then the Young Pistols was like the speed team. So there was that contrast to styles. I do like the power versus speed, big man versus little man. You know, it's like great stories you could tell with that. At one point, the lights cut off during this match, and they ended up wrestling in the dark with a couple of spotlights to like so you could see. I guess there was like a light malfunction or outage or whatnot that they had to take care of, but they kept on like professionals wrestling throughout it until the lights eventually would come on. Tracy Smothers would end up getting the pin over Rick Morgan after Steve Armstrong would interfere with the royal family, trying to do a double team suplex. Nothing too crazy. These first 5 matches, nothing really super crazy. Ironically enough, the best match so far you could either argue was that match with Brad Armstrong and beautiful Bobby Eaton. But in my opinion, I really feel like it was the ladies. Just they were doing so much. And again, at this time, it was just so ahead of its time. I definitely got to give the first half, because there's 10 matches on this card. First half of the show goes to the ladies from Japan, showing what the Japanese could do over there. After that, we get Tony Schiavone. He interviews DDP. It's me, DDP. At this time, DDP is not even a wrestler yet. DDP is a manager. And again, me not being super familiar with WCW, this would be my first time watching that. I had an almanac growing up because I was a super hardcore wrestling fan. And I did watch, I really got more so into WCW once Hulk Hogan transitioned over and whatnot. And then the NWO, that's when I really got into it, the Monday Night Wars and whatnot. But these early 90s WCW, a lot of it I didn't really catch except for a couple shows or whatnot. But at this time, I was familiar that he was a manager before he became a wrestler. I just wasn't 100% familiar who all he managed. But apparently one of them was the Fabulous Freebirds, Michael Hayes, which is kind of funny because, he's always been a backstage guy in WWF for a long time. So to see him in action later on was a trip in itself. But with this matchup, or not even with this matchup, this interview was one of the greatest segments. This might be my favorite segment. Matter of fact, not even might be. This is my favorite part of the entire show. More than any matchup, more than any segment, this is my favorite part of the show. You got DDP out there talking his shit with the most sparkly black vest or jacket or whatever. And then he's over there talking his shit about how he's smarter than Teddy Long and how he outsmarted Teddy Long into having Doom put their titles on the line against the Fabulous Freebirds. And this whole time he got these beautiful black women on the side of him. He's looking like a pimp, my dude. DDP is looking like a straight pimp. Got the 4 sisters with him and everything, just feeling himself. And then Teddy Long comes out of nowhere with the most majestic, holy do-rag I've ever seen in my life. This is the most incredible, bedazzled, sparkly, shiny do-rag I've ever seen in my life. You gotta see. Go back. Do me a favor. Please go to WCW on the network, go to their pay-per-views, and go to WCW Wrestle War 1991, and then go to the part that have the little segments where you could go skip to. Go to where Tony Schiavone is interviewing Diamond Dallas Page. Look at what Teddy Long pulls up with. That do-rag, I have never seen a do-rag like that in my life, and I've seen a lot of do-rags. That was the most amazing do-rag I've ever seen. Hilarious. Teddy Long gets over there, starts talking his shit right back to DDP, man. It was just one of those hilarious moments. It was too funny. I haven't laughed that hard in so long. That might have been my hardest I've laughed all 2020. That fucking do-rag was insane. So after Teddy Long and the thing Teddy Long, I got it in the note in the little prompter, interview with the most incredible do-rag ever, man. Teddy Long's do-rag was insane, bro. You got to go check out that do-rag. So next match on the card, match number 6 was between Terry Taylor and the Z-Man. Terry Taylor representing the York Foundation, and then the Z-Man next time on Dragon Ball Z. Nah, man, the Z-Man, I don't know. He looks like a good value Rick Martel to me. I couldn't tell. He just looked like a generic creator wrestler type person. But if any wrestler I could think that he resembled, it'd probably be Rick Martel. again with Terry Taylor, you know, you got like the kind of look like they kind of give you like the IRS the Irwin dude from IRS. Forgot his last name. That Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas's dad. He kind of got his attire gimmick kind of thing going on, but more so Wall Street than the IRS collection people. Terry Taylor, you could tell was someone that the brand was high on at the time. The commentators were really doing a lot of character build for him and just really trying to build up his character and build up the legitimacy of the York Foundation all throughout the match. So much so you kind of felt like he was going to win the match. But especially when he got the interview beforehand, but then just listening to the commentary throughout the match was kind of like obviously like who they're trying to build and who they're trying to like get over at that point. The ref during this match, well, that was another thing I did take note of that was kind of hilarious to me, was that the ref in this matchup was maybe the biggest referee I've ever seen in pro wrestling. The referee looked like he was 6'5". The referee was clearly bigger than both of the wrestlers. He looked like if there was a triple threat match, the referee would have won the match. JR does point out a couple times that the referee is a rookie, and the reason he had to point that out is kind of like when you watch AEW now when a referee does something that like makes like a huge mistake and then JR calling him out on it. Like, it's nice to see that even back then there were mistakes being made for like the old school people like Jim Cornette or whatever who like to over critique or like, you know, really constantly bash like the wrestlers and the disregard for the rules or whatever. There were times, there were slip ups on this card. It was not a perfect by any stretch of the imagination. A lot more grounded, a lot more looked more like a real fight in the sense that it wasn't a lot of more choreographed or looked like working together to execute a move type thing or whatnot, because a lot of the stuff was like more so basic at that time period. But there was one part where the Z-Man, he had a flying crossbody off the top ropes, but the referee got distracted by the valet instead of count the pin. But it was so weird, like how it happened, because like he clearly saw him like in the pin position, but instead just went over and started talking to the manager anyway. It was just real sloppy. Z-Man tried to get the ref's attention while doing that, which is it also led to the finish, which was kind of like a sloppy finish. So in a sense, like the female matchup is still, with 6 matches into this card, the female matchup is the best match on this card, unless you want to give it to Brad Armstrong and beautiful Bobby Eaton. 7th match on this card. Before we get to the 7th matchup, there's another segment. This segment involved Paul Heyman. So Paul Heyman comes out, and you know what? There's something for like a lot of the wrestling groups I'm in. There's a gif of Brock Lesnar coming out with the sombrero and dancing, like doing like little like salsa dancing and everything. And then you got one with Brock Lesnar with the gif with the boombox and everything. Like, if people saw this Paul Heyman sombrero skit, like I'm sure there would be gifs on it already. I'll probably eventually get around to making it into a gif if someone doesn't beat me to it. But I highly recommend checking out this segment. I'm pretty sure this is one of those segments Paul probably wouldn't, you know, probably ain't too proud of now, especially with this politically correct and sensitive climate that we are in. But Paul Heyman comes out with a sombrero and a cape, and he cuts a heel promo basically aimed at the Latin community. It was very controversial. You could even say it was not even could be. It was a racist. It was a racist promo to me in a sense. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm going a little too far with saying the rest, but I mean, it was what it was. Like, he really basically said, like, I'm from New York, and I grew up around Spanish people, and I haven't met not one that's like basically a good person. They're all thieves. They're all basically criminals. They all basically do drugs. Like, he basically was cutting into Latin community, classic heel promo, saying everything he could to push your buttons and get that reaction out of you. He was going for that clearly, you know. So El Gigante comes out, the giant, And basically Paul Heyman is basically running him down with all this stereotypical, you know, verbiage, just putting him down left and right, saying some stuff that's borderline, if not racist, or borderline, if not just completely racist. So then El Gigante, he's just like playing it up like, I don't speak English, I don't understand what you're saying, pretty much. But then after Paul Heyman, so Paul Heyman is basically getting away with, saying all this racist stuff to the guy because he doesn't understand what he's saying. And then after saying all this racist shit to him, decides that wasn't enough and slaps El Gigante. Now that's when El Gigante has enough. I believe he picks up Paul Heyman and body slammed him. And then he picks up the sombrero and then puts the sombrero on and then, walks off with like the sombrero, doing like some little wave to everybody or whatnot. After the whole, him dressed up in Latin, like super stereotypes to like demean, and you know what I'm saying, to demean the Latin community and demean him as a person. While I was glad he got beat up and handled, I kind of didn't like dude throwing on like the sombrero, you know what I'm saying? Even though it's like, yeah, like I beat his ass and took his shit. Like normally that'd be cool, but in this case I really didn't kind of like it because it's kind of be like as if he would have came out there and did blackface, or if he would have came out there with like a bucket of fried chicken or some shit like that, and the black dude beat him up and then just took the fried chicken and started eating the fried chicken. Like that's what it did. He like played up the stereotype even more, So like, man, for like the racists in the crowd who didn't mind his promo, like it was like you done treated them to additional entertainment by entertaining them by throwing on the stereotypical sombrero that they were using to make fun of you. So like, I don't know, I was a little bit split on that, but I do know it's a different time period. And again, like I'm not super like sensitive on these matters. It is what it is. So after that, we get Tony Schiavone, and it's a second segment before another match. This time, Tony Schiavone is with the Great Muta from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they're promoting a match that'll be taking place later on that year between Sting and the Great Muta in New Japan on March 1991 at the Japan Super Show. So I'm definitely going to probably have to go back. Now, that's not going to be on the WWE Network, but I do have the New Japan Pro Wrestling World subscription as well. So if I could find it on there, I'll definitely check it out if I could find it. But I'm not 100% sure they're going to have it on there, but fingers crossed they do. Match 7. All right, so it was on this card. Stan Hansen versus Big Van Vader. This was all right. So I said 6 matches so far, the women had the best match. That would finally change. This match, if no other match was better than the women's match so far on the card, this match definitely did that. It really just reminded me how great Vader is, man. Like, what a legend. One of the best big men ever in professional wrestling. Vader was that dude. Vader had a presence to him, a larger than life persona. His entrance alone was larger than life, man. His entrance when he comes out there with the Mastodon mask, and then he takes it off, and then he puts it down, and then the smoke still comes from the mask, and the eyes are lighting up, and he just got his little like Vader was that dude, bro. Like I can't stress enough, man. Vader was so fire, bro. Like Vader was really one of those faces of WCW. Like I don't know if I'm gonna put him on the top 4 because there's so many great. Like he's if there was a council, if there was a top 10 WCW, he's definitely top 10 WCW, if not Mount Rushmore. Like Vader is that dude, man. Him and Stan Hansen had a very great matchup. Vader is a fucking beast. This was a dogfight out the gate. I loved it. It fit both of these guys. Like now, normally when like guys just get straight into it, it's just like a out the gate, just like wild brawl or whatnot. It doesn't necessarily match everybody. But with these guys, they don't have to be technical. There ain't got to be a lot of lockups, a lot of filling out process. These are 2 brawlers, 2 big brawlers, and it felt like a straight up street fight inside of a ring. The referee Pee Wee calls for a double disqualification. He could not keep control of these guys. They were bullying the ref throughout the matchup. There's one part in the matchup where Hansen's choking Vader with his noose or his long rope that he carries with him. The fight just goes all the way up the rampway, and it just really shows because again, like I wasn't super big on some of these WCW people, so Stan Hansen, I wasn't really too big or familiar on him, but I was always big and familiar on Vader. But for some not being so familiar on Stan Hansen, watching him in there with Vader, like it's just like, all right, now I know what Stan Hansen's about, because that was like the perfect showcase for a Stan Hansen for people who aren't familiar to grew up with Stan Hansen. Like, go definitely recommend watching that back. Stan Hansen reminds me of like a cross between the Sandman and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just like another badass Texas motherfucker. I don't know if he's from Texas or whatnot, but like he's just like a badass motherfucker. Looked like he got the chewing tobacco just dripping out of his mouth onto his belly and shit. It just looked like he would have fit in an ECW or the Attitude Era. So that was another great match. All right, so match number 8. Now business is starting to kick up. So I guess with WCW, the pay-per-view was like the first 5 matches, like the appetizer, you know what I'm saying? Like the salad, the soup that they bring you, the chips, the bread before you get your real meals at Ruth Chris or something like that. Or you go to Benihana's and they give you, you know what I'm saying? They chop up the zucchini and they chop up like, you know, the little bit of the little rice they give you and, you know, your little small little entrees and everything before you get to your main dishes and whatnot. Like, that's what the first 5 matches or 6 matches on the card felt like. And then once it got 7, 8, 9, 10, that's when it was just like fire. The rest of the pay-per-view. That's when business picked up, as JR would like to say. So first match. Oh man, I misspelled United. All right, so so match number 8 is for the United States title. It's Dangerous Dan Spivey versus Lex Luger. Lex Luger is already the United States champion. However, there has been I just dropped my orange. There is a new U.S. title that has been made and will be crowned or presented to whoever wins this matchup. They'll be presented with the new U.S. title matchup, title championship match. They'll be presented with a new U.S. title championship. All right, so Lex Luger, man, watching this match back, like, Dan Spivey, another person I was never really super big on or anything like that. Lex Luger comes out with the biggest pop of the night so far. The fans are really feeling Lex Luger. Lex Luger, man, damn, Lex Luger in his prime, man. This dude, we already know Lex Luger's like, we called him the total package. That was his moniker. Man, a young Lex Luger, this dude was so incredibly in shape, dude, like, pause, but Lex Luger was like, he looked like he could really bounce motherfuckers. He looked like he could really beat up damn near everybody on the roster, man. Like, Lex Luger looked like a fucking problem, man. But this was a really good back and forth matchup. Lex Luger came back, and Lex Luger would counter Spivey trying to slam him out of a corner and hit a roll up to end up getting the victory. While this match was good, it was more so what happened after that match that'll stand out and probably be like the highlight of the match. And again, I'm not really too big on like small package victories. Like, they're like when done right, but when it's like overdone or like done more than once in a pay-per-view, I'm not really a fan of that. The small package kind of feel like it takes away from the person who's winning, like kind of in a sense like saying they can't beat the person without, like, you know, like just cleanly, in a sense, kind of doesn't feel like a clean win. But in this matchup, there is a roll-up. Wasn't too mad with it, but wasn't too fond either with it being a title match. You know, like some of my favorite roll-ups probably be definitely Owen Hart, Bret Hart, WrestleMania 10, Bret Hart versus British Bulldog. Roll-ups like that, you know, but this one, I don't know. But what happened after the match is what really was I did pick. This was the first match on the card to actually you decide. Oh, so this was another thing about this match. So during Wrestle War, the main event is it is War Games. So they have 2 rings the entire pay-per-view, and this is one of the things kind of irritated me during the card. But I guess like I'm not even gonna say it irritated me. As a matter of fact, it didn't irritate me. Now that I'm looking back on hindsight, but one of the things that kind of just threw me off was there was 2 rings the entire time out there before the cage comes down. There's 2 rings, but every matchup until the Lex Luger match, for the first 7 matches, they only used 1 ring. They all used the same exact ring. No one touched the other ring the entire time. They throw them over to the other ring, knock them out to the other ring, or none of that. And the rings are side by side. Like they stayed in 1 ring as if the other ring was not even there. The Lex Luger and Dangerous Dan Spivey, I gave them extra points because they were the first to actually use the other side of the ring. So I liked that. That was a great little addition to their matchup that a lot of other people didn't take advantage of when they had the opportunity to do so. Another thing that happened, so after the match is over, Lex Luger is going to get presented the title by Tony Schiavone and Nikolai Volkov. And as they are presenting him the title, Nikolai Koloff attacks Lex Luger, stating he's held every title but the United States title, and he is gunning at Lex Luger, and he has his eyes set on becoming the next WCW US title. What was so fire about this was like, I recall I recall Nikolai Volkov from his WWF, but I don't recall him being this young when I recall watching him. Maybe he was, but maybe he was even younger. Maybe this was after he left WWE. But in either case, man, he killed it. He really, it was such a great promo. He beat the crap out of Lex Luger. It was just like it kind of felt like like y'all thought I was done. He thought I was finished. He thought I was calling it quits. Like he had so much charisma, so much energy. He took it up another notch when he attacked Lex Luger and did that promo. Basically, like really makes me gonna want to go back and see how that played out, because man, it was really good. Another guy who could match Lex Luger with the believability. There's a lot of believability there too, because like for as crazy as Lex Luger looked in his prime, like Nikolai Volkov like was right there with them, like physical specimen. Like they were both. It was a good one. So after that, we get the co-main event. We get the WCW tag team titles on the line. The Fabulous Freebirds with their manager DDP taking on Doom. That's Ron Simmons and Butch Reed with their manager Teddy Long. So again, Teddy Long comes out with the most incredible do-rag that matches DDP's vest. I feel like that was DDP's do-rag, or vice versa. That was Teddy Long's vest. And they like one of the others letting the other one use it, because like they matched up perfectly. That do-rag matched DDP's vest so perfectly. I wouldn't be surprised if it was his initially. DDP as the manager kind of reminded me of like a mix between Dusty Rhodes and James Brown. I don't know why, but he just did. Ron Simmons and Michael Hayes in their prime wrestling on WCW. That's just a trip, especially when you would see they were both. This is right before Ron Simmons goes on to have his career in WWE as Farouk and everything. I'm pretty sure that this is probably like, if not his last pay-per-view, like leading up to his like goodbye, just because of how it played out, which I'll get to in a minute. One of the things I was also wondering, I kind of curious whatever happened to Butch Reed. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't recall him doing much after him and Farouk's or Ron Simmons broke up as a tag team. Ron Simmons like was doing his thing. Both of them was doing their thing. This matchup with the Fabulous Freebirds. Excuse me. With obviously Doom being the power team, Fabulous Freebirds the more technical, speedy, high-flying team. You know what I'm saying? Very charismatic team. But the Freebirds would end up getting the victory after Butch Reed would turn on Ron Simmons, hitting him in the face with the brass knuckles. At first, they made it look like it was an accident, so you didn't see the double turn after the match coming. But there was a double match after the turn coming, as Butch Reed and Teddy Long would turn on Ron Simmons, beating him down even more with the brass knuckles. I'm pretty sure this will lead to the final story or outage for Ron Simmons before going over to WWF as Farouk. And then in the main event, we had the War Games match, which was the Four Horsemen. And there's so many different variations. The Four Horsemen variation for this War Games match included Ric Flair, Barry Windham, Sid Vicious, and Larry Zbyszko taking on Sting. This is old school beach surfer Sting before the Crow Sting, which personally, like, this might have been my favorite Sting in some sense. Like, this was definitely the best in-ring Sting. Brian Pillman, damn, it was so dope to see flying Brian Pillman back in his prime, man, back when he was just young doing his thing over in WCW. And the Steiner brothers, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, legit one of the toughest people in all of professional wrestling. This was definitely the match of the night overall. So I do like it when they say the main event lives up to being the main event, and when the main event should be technically the best match on the card. You never know what's going to be the best match. Sometimes having big names doesn't necessarily equate to being the best match on the card, but this definitely delivered. It ended up being the best match on the card. Pillman and Windham would start the match. Pillman would start with a very fast pace. Pillman had so much charisma. Fans definitely was feeling Brian Pillman. Definitely was a rising star at this time. You could tell his star was just shooting through the roof. Brian Pillman had Barry Windham leaking early before anyone else even got into the matchup. Barry Windham was covered in blood. His whole face was covered in blood. Ric Flair would be the first person to join the War Games match for his team. At this point, it's basically 2-on-1. They would go on to get their heel advantage, working over Brian Pillman until Sting would be the first person to enter for the good guys. So now it's Sting and Brian Pillman going one-on-one with Ric Flair and Barry Windham. And man, Sting saves Pillman, who's getting beat down. Sting and Ric Flair's chemistry is like, I know we say Savage and Steamboat, Flair and Steamboat, but man, one of those classic rivalries. Sting and Flair and Sting and Vader, classic rivalries. But man, Sting and Ric Flair, their chemistry in this matchup, it just brought me back to childhood, because as I said, I wasn't super familiar with WCW, but two of the people I were very familiar with was Sting and Ric Flair, and those are the few matches that I would tune in no matter what for would be a Sting and Ric Flair match. So watching this back, it just brought back so many memories. They were doing all their classic spots and everything, just killing it. Zbyszko would end up getting in the matchup next. And then from there, Sting is on fire. He's diving over one ring to the other, cross bodies, splashing onto Larry Zbyszko, while Pillman has Barry Windham in a figure-4 leg lock outside. Man, Rick Steiner would end up joining the matchup after that, and Rick Steiner goes straight after Flair. I guess it's around the time where they were starting to really get high on Rick Steiner, and they kind of wanted him to be the next guy to take down Ric Flair. Scott Steiner was still young to the game and whatnot. At this time, Rick was definitely more so the bigger star out of the two. But yeah, he goes in there. He is just running shop on everybody. But then he's like mainly being matched up with Ric Flair at this point. After that, Sid Justice enters the ring, goes straight after Sting, keeping, again, Rick Steiner on Ric Flair. And I guess Sid Vicious would, occupy Sting so that Rick Steiner could, get that rub from Ric Flair at this time. Ric Flair was really giving a rub for Brian Pillman and for Rick Steiner in this matchup, because they have moments where he was definitely working a lot with Brian Pillman, trying to pit him over. And the same thing where Rick Steiner came into the matchup. So once again, the heels get their advantage once Sid gets into the ring. And then finally, the final person to enter the ring, Scott Steiner. This is young Steiner brothers, Scott Steiner, before the white hair, before Big Papa Pump. But he gets up in there and he is doing his thing. He is just cleaning house on everybody. There is a spot that'll break out after everybody's in the ring where the baby faces have all the heels in the figure four leg lock. The only problem is you could once again see. And so again, I was talking about how like when you see like the older, personalities, they'll critique every single last thing with AEW or WWE's current product, like everything was perfect. There's 5 out of 10 matches on this card that were very average. You know what I'm saying? Even 6 really, and then really didn't pick up until the later half for once. So for the people I was just constantly burying like the new school of wrestling, like it wasn't like there was definitely things that you definitely have points that you make that I would agree with, but it wasn't just all perfect at any point. There was definitely mistakes and stuff being made back then as well. One of the things, talking about mistakes, Sid Vicious must have been pretty green at this time, because he, more than anybody in the card, he was talking, like you could see him talking, like maybe he wasn't familiar where the cameras are set up or whatnot, but like there's this one spot where all the faces put the 4 heels, the 4 horsemen in figure 4 leg locks, but you could hear not Sting, but you could hear Sid Justice or read his lip movements saying like figure 4 to Brian Pillman to let him know that, hey, come and put me in the figure 4. It's time for the figure 4 spot. And sure enough, as soon as you see him say like figure 4 or whatnot, the other guys have just got done putting the other people in the figure 4, and then he just goes immediately into figure 4 leg locks. So there was 2 parts in the match where like you catch Sid saying something and then they do exactly what he said. So it's just like that kind of took a couple points off of it for me, but it was still clearly the match of the night. There's this one part where Sting, I believe it was Sting, if not it was Rick Steiner, I want to say it was Sting though, that lifted Ric Flair above his head, and the cage wasn't too high above their head, but he like lifted him up for gorilla press and was just like bench pressing him up, hitting him up against the top of the cage. That was a dope spot for me in the match. It was one of my favorite spots of the whole night. Let's see what else happened on this thing. Oh yeah, it was Sting. Pillman and Ric Flair, they had a spot where they were exchanging chops, and Pillman ended up getting the advantage on Flair. That was definitely a nice rub for Brian Pillman. Ric Flair, who I heard recently was very high on Brian Pillman, wanted to do as much as he can to put him over, and you could see that in this matchup. He was cutting away to work with Pillman a couple times during this matchup and doing everything he can to make Brian Pillman look like a star, which he is. The match actually ends with Sid Justice hits a nasty power bomb on Brian Pillman. The first one he hits was like terrible, I want to say. He hits 2 power bombs back to back. The first one I want to say probably was the one that he botched, and it looked really bad the way he landed, and then he picked him up and did it again correctly. Or it might have been the opposite, where he hit the first one correctly and then botched the second one and dropped him wrong. In either case, the match ends with him 2 power bombs, one of which was a botch, and then Brian Pillman's no longer able to continue with El Gigante coming out to call the match to save Brian Pillman from taking any additional damage. A lot of times, I want to say, to my recollection, that War Games that the faces win. So this was one of those rare times that I can recall the bad guys winning. 4 Horsemen get the victory at WCW Wrestle War 1991. That was a very solid card. It wasn't nothing too crazy, but it is what it is. I liked the positives and pros from it that I did like was that the main event was the main event. Like it felt like the main event. It was the best match. It delivered in that sense. You know, I do kind of wish that there was less filler matches, matches that just didn't feel like, you know, just felt like regular matches that could have been on TV. The first 5, 6 matches felt like that for the most part. I didn't really feel like, all right, we're in pay-per-view territory until we really got to match number 7, Stan Hansen and Vader, and then from there it was just like, all right, heavy hitters now, you know. But aside from that, that's basically the WCW Wrestle War for 1991, and I was gonna do the WWF Raw 5/17/1993. I'm gonna go ahead and take a little break. I'm gonna stop this broadcast and then I'm gonna start a second one. That way, when I download the audio, I could just plug them straight into each episode, so that I don't gotta waste time chopping up these videos into different ones to edit it. So this is part 1 of 3 for 5-Star Pod Splash. Last episode at this house. This first part is the War Games. Second part I will get into in 10 minutes. We'll take a quick little break. I will get into the WWF Raw 5/17 from 1993 as requested by a listening viewer by the name of Nick. I don't want to butcher your last name. It starts with O, but it was Nick O who requested I review WWF Raw 5/17/1993. Now this one, unlike Wrestle War, I am very familiar with growing up a WWF fan. I wasn't 100% sure what he was alluding to when he requested it. And to be honest, when I was watching it back, I didn't recall much of this until I saw one match on there that stood out that let me know, oh yeah, I definitely saw this as a kid. And I definitely recall like the aftermath and like the aftermath of what took place. I recall there was a huge buzz about something that happened in this matchup. Something a lot of us, me and my cousins and brother, were really hype about the debut of a certain special wrestler. We'll get into it as soon as I get back from this break. Y'all are watching 5-Star Pod Splash. Thank y'all for tuning in to this very first part of 5-Star Pod Splash, breaking down WCW Wrestle War 1991. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow the whole effing show on Facebook Gaming, and also on Twitch. And then for my YouTube audience, make sure to like, follow, subscribe Top Shelf TV. If you would like to make a donation to help support the channel and to constantly put out more content, you could send a donation Cash App to Fatamania, spelled exactly how it is on the screen. And for the people who cannot watch visually or are just on the go, on the road, or looking for something to listen to while you're at work or on the road or something like that, go ahead and check out the 5-Star Pod Splash for the audio versions. You could pick up the video versions. You can watch back previous episodes on the whole effing show, and then you could go watch back previous audio versions on Anchor and Spotify at 5-Star Pod Splash. Thank you all for tuning to this part 1 of 3. I'm going to do the second part in just a moment. Might just do it in the morning time. It's getting a little bit late right now. For WWF Monday Night Raw. Peace out.